I think you've mentioned that to me before, actually, but it's a good one to be reminded of for sure.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and a Bible. If you like the idea of a casual yet meaningful chat about the Bible with a couple of mates, listen in. Something here could be good for you.
Today is day 174, covering Psalms 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 7. If you need a brief overview of that half of the Bible, it's in the description. So you've done a general note.
Yeah, I did. I did it on a sort of Psalm 51. That a lot, I don't know, in my Bible at least, I don't know if it's true on everyone's, it gives like a bit of an overview of that psalm or like a background to it kind of thing. And mine just says, for the director of music, a psalm of David when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba. And what I love about it is basically this was written straight after David had been called out on the worst sin of his life, when he was probably considered like at his furthest from God type of situation. And just the weight of that is like, actually, when we're in that absolute feel like we've just gone completely off the rails, that is the important time for us to run to God instead of running from God. The enemy wants us to feel as though we are going to be, you know, chastised, kicked out, cancel culture, all this crap. Actually, no, that is when we need to run to God the most and not face condemnation from other people. And like, yeah,
Dude, that's absolutely true. One of the ways, I think, I can't remember which pastor put it or what video I watched, it's somewhere in there though in my memory banks. As a father, you would understand this even more so as well, I think. If your son or daughter did something wrong and was in trouble, would you rather they went further from you in that time or got closer to you, right? And obviously you would prefer that they came straight to you for help than distancing themselves, even if you were annoyed in some way about what they did to some level, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd still rather they were there.
That's very true, man. That's very true.
So I love that analogy, that fatherhood analogy or parental.
Yeah. Just because you've mentioned fatherhood analogy, if I keep looking down a lot today, it's because I'm playing daddy daycare this evening and I got little one on the baby monitor and she's cute, so I keep looking at her moving around in her sleep a little bit. Melody's out for a coffee with a friend, and so I've got like just trying to keep everything afloat. So if I suddenly disappear, it's because she started yelling or something.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just start juggling, even though I can't juggle, just to try and keep them entertained while you're gone. All right, I've got one from 51 myself, I guess we'll do. So against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Psalm 51 verse 4. And I thought it's kind of, again, there's been a few interesting concepts. One I touched on the other day was this idea that when God punishes us or disciplines us, sorry, it's not obviously for his benefit ultimately, right? He doesn't get anything out of it. And as weird as that sounds, like I hadn't really considered that from that angle before exactly. And this is this idea that, you know, I think that we sin against each other all the time. But what this is saying is effectively, really ultimately, you're actually just sinning against God. So, you know, only you and you only have I sinned and done evil. See what I mean? And I guess that's because God is the ultimate standard of justice. So he's the only one who can exactly be held up to that standard and obviously pass it. And so we're only sinning against him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to sort of strike, really. In that same exact section, I had it highlighted, didn't make a note in verse 4. So you are right in your verdict. And this is obviously, David has just gone through this whole point of being caught out in his sin. And he's saying that, you know what, God, whatever your verdict, you're right. And it's that concept of like our sin is against God ultimately. And whatever he decides, he's right because he's just and because we don't deserve anything anyway.
Right. But my point, just to be clear, my point was more like, if I do something against you, I feel like I'm sinning against you. But what this is saying is, even though it seems against you, it's ultimately against God. That's what I thought was kind of pretty cool about that.
I mean, I think he's talking to God in this, against you and only you're just twitching it. Cool. That's my,
Anyways, we'll have to keep going. Have you got
so 51, 51:10, create in me a pure heart and renew in me a steadfast spirit. The word steadfast was actually given to me back in 2007 by Daniel Bevan from the Intensified Weekend Away from King's Church, Portsmouth. So thank you, Dan Bevan. If I haven't spoken to you in years, but whatever, you might stumble across this. And it's this whole point of being steadfast, where it's so easy to have those great encounters with God, but actually, are we steadfast in our faith and in our relationship with him? Or do we just as quickly wander back to old habits, old ways of life and stuff like that? The steadfast is the tricky part.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact it was given to you as your word. That's really interesting and cool. So then I don't have anything from 52, I'm afraid. Going into 53, everyone has turned away, all have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. This sparked something for me. So that's 53 verse 3, by the way, which is, there's this idea of like our best work is still like filthy rags in front of the Lord. I look more into it, and once we're saved through Jesus, then our good works actually are counted as good works because they can be registered. And I thought that was really cool. But this is pre-Jesus, obviously, so this is still the filthy rags analogy.
Cool.
Yeah, there you go.
I had a couple of little tiny points, really. We've got a couple of minutes left, I suppose. 53:3, there is no one who does good, not even one. Just another example of people in that time believing that, the entire world was corrupt kind of thing. And that's pre-Jesus, isn't it? So we've kind of chatted on that before.
Yeah, absolutely. So then into 54, you have delivered me from all my troubles and my eyes have looked in triumph on my foes. 54 verse 7. And that made me laugh because at the moment I'm still going through quite a few struggles with different things. And so I recognize, of course, that ultimately that is true. I think I'm tomorrow going to be speaking about how God purifies us like silver. That's something that I've really enjoyed like reading about in one of the Psalms later on. But, just because we ultimately do have triumph over our foes and over the ultimate enemy, Satan, of course, doesn't mean that life's all peachy and perfect all the time, people, right? So I like verses like that, but it's important to remember there's the ultimate win that we've got, and then there's some little difficulties still on this earth.
Yeah, totally, dude. Psalm 54 verse 1 for me: save me, O God, by your name. Just the strength and the weight of the name of God is all we need to save us, effectively. And it was just this whole thought of like his name has power. And the name Yahweh, I can't remember when I'd heard it or where, but in Hebrew, Greek, something like that, it's sort of translated down to, and the name of God is, and basically when you're breathing, you are breathing the name of God, because you just, but that in whichever, I should have Googled it, I apologize, is the word of God. It's like, save me by your name. It's just,
that's so sweet. That's so cool, man. That's good. In fact, I like that I always do the finger.
Stick him in the nose, yeah.
Yeah, I am. That's really cool, man. I think you've mentioned that to me before, actually, but it's a good one to be reminded of for sure. In 55, actually, if you want to go first, because mine's a bit later on in 55.
All right, cool. Psalm 55, verse 1. Verse 4 to 8. My heart's in anguish within me, terrors of death have fallen me, fear and trembling. Oh God, that I could be set on the wings of a dove, fly away, be at rest, flee far away, stay in a desert. Like this whole thing of like, I'm in trouble, I want to run away. You can't run away from your problems, was what I took out of that. Like wherever we try to run from our problems, they will catch up with us. We need to tackle our problems head on, and then we can deal with them long term. And then actually it goes on to 55:22, cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. So just the two of them play off very nicely against one another.
Love that, man. Yeah, from 55 verse 17, basically it's this idea of evening, morning and noon I cry out in distress and he hears my voice. So it builds on what you're saying. He should always be the first person to cry out too. So there's a good synergy with our thoughts there. And then last one from me, Psalm 57 verse 6. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. Massive Mordecai vibes there, right? Like, so that was my last thing.
Nice. Well, tomorrow's readings are Psalm 58 through to 65. So why don't you get reading?
In the meantime, please consider joining us on social media at 2 Brits and Bible and sharing this with someone to help spread the word of God.